Hi again, incidental gardeners. It's me again, Amy. I'm happy you're here. I'm here today to talk to you about bouganvillia. Bougainvillea is considered like the David Goggins of a plant. It's considered to be like one of the toughest plants you've ever come across, and they don't get affected by anything and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's not entirely true. They are quite hardy, but you have to be careful in the beginning, because when they are being like moved or transplanted or anything that's going to mess with them in any way, they get really annoyed. So I'm here to tell you. All right. I'll give you the example of this one to start with. When I first got this one, I was amazed, because the man in the nursery, he told me, oh, this is a special bougainvillia, it doesn't have any leaves, and I'll get into that later, but it's beautiful, and it had flowers and everything, and I put it in this copper pot. It was in its normal pot, but I put it in a copper pot to look nice, and then after a couple of weeks it started just to look like a bunch of sticks, and I realised that what had happened was that this pot didn't have any drainage. So that's no good. The bougainvillia was living in a boiling hot swamp, just festering away in there, and eventually just said, I've had enough, I'm just going to drop everything. And it did. It just looked like a bunch of old sticks for a few months, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. I didn't know I was doing everything right. And then of course I lifted it out of the pot, and there it was. It was just a swamp of horrible yucky water that it had been living in, so no wonder it wasn't doing so well. So word of advice, just put them in a pot that drains really well, first of all. Now onto the idea of the flowers. They are not really flowers. They're called flowers because they're so pretty and they're colourful, but they only really have tiny little white flowers. But they have these beautiful coloured leaves. They're called bracts. They're a type of plant that they produce these 3 leaves. I'll show you. And they're called bracts. They're kind of leaf, and they're paper thin, and they're sort of, when they dry out they're almost like paper. The plant is called a paper plant in some countries because it's got these paper plant type bracts. They're all papery. So you're gonna get a bit confused when somebody says a flowering bougainvillia. Generally they mean the blooms, but the blooms are actually bracts. Okay guys, here are the bracts and here are the flowers. As you can see, there are usually about 3 flowers covered, looked after by the 3 bracts, and that is actually how they look. Those are the real flowers, and then you've got this beautiful colour. They come in so many different colours: orange, white, purple, red. Red one's called Scarlet O'Hara, which I love the name. And that's basically what they look like close up. And so that's that one. So it's quite different to the other ones. It's more stick-like, and it doesn't have very many leaves. It's got more bloom, this colourful look. And then we've got this one, which is a vine. And the vines, as you can see, you can train them to go up anywhere. If you've got a good, they will grow around sticks, they'll grow around like a trellis, they'll grow around stairs, anything you've got. As you can see, this one's just weaving its way around. You just give it some help and it'll just do it on its own. They're amazing, and they really do brighten your garden because they are full of these amazing flowers. Their bloom cycles are between like 4 and 6 weeks. So you'll get loads of blooms, and then they'll sort of calm it down a bit and they'll become more subdued depending on how much sun they get. And bougainvillias need a lot of sun. They don't like to be in the shade. If you put them in the shade, they'll just be all kind of, they might be leafy, a bit sort of distraught. They probably won't be that happy, so they need a fair bit of sun. Also, they as I said, don't put them in a pot that's not well drained. They need well draining soil, and they need well draining pots. They do not like to be soggy. So if you're going to water them, you water them quite a bit, like at the beginning when you first got them, as I said, because they're really wimpy when they're first getting established. They'll do all this weird stuff you'll think this isn't a tough plant, this is just some kind of wimpy plant. But actually they're not. It only takes them a few weeks. Persevere, don't think you've killed the plant, it's fine. Just give them water once or twice, like twice a week. And then after that, once they're established, just check when the soil is dry. If it's dried out, which like about 3 inches and they look properly dry, give them lots of a good drink. They like a good drink. They like to get really dry and then have a good drink. They're a bit like cacti, funnily enough. You need to let them dry out and then let them have a good drink. I mean, here it gets up to 40 degrees in summer, so I was watering them about twice a week because it was so hot. But if you live in a cooler climate, you probably need to water them once a week, if that. And then, if you're going to fertilise them, I'll tell you something. Like I don't recommend it. People say you can fertilise them like once or twice a year, but if you're going to fertilise them, what you're going to get is loads of green leaves. They tend to put all their energy into growing leaves, and not much into making these beautiful, colourful bracts. So if you're going to fertilise them, it might actually sort of send your colour on a downward spiral. You're going to get more green. So it's up to you. You can give it a shot. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. I haven't fertilised either of these, and they're just going for it totally. So don't need to do that. They're pretty low maintenance. They don't need much maintenance once they're established. Okay, another thing is they actually don't need a very big pot. They like to be root bound. They don't like to be messed with, basically. Bougainvillias just don't like to be messed with. If you mess around with their roots and their pots, they get really annoyed and they won't be very happy. So actually they're a perfect pot plant because you don't need to do much with them. You can just leave them in their pots, and they quite like to be root bound, so they're happy with that. Some people even plant them in the garden in the pot because they like to be like that. So the main things with the bougainvillia is don't water them too much, only when they're sort of dry, at least 3 inches down. They like a lot of sun. They don't like to be messed with very much, and they don't really need fertilizer. I don't recommend fertilizer for them. And that's pretty much it. And pruning, if you're going to prune them, you want to go like 6 inches down, like something like this. But I've snipped this one here, and look, it's come out with this whole leaf with all these flowers. So if you snip them about there, it doesn't really matter how you do it, they are tough in that sense. They'll come out with another branch, and they'll come out with some more bracts and some more flowers. And that's it. You can train them, you can just train them to go up and down like this. Like this one's just going happily around. Now, one thing I would say is they do have thorns. This one's spiky, it's got spiky branches, but this one has real thorns on it. So if you are training it, it's probably better because it won't be sort of hanging out onto the floor and nobody's going to scratch themselves. And that's about it. Like, I recommend bougainvillia. I think it's one of those plants that it's a bit tricky to start with. You think you might have killed your plant, but you haven't. Just look after it, just give it some water, give it some time, a couple of weeks, and it will slowly come to life, and it will reward you with these really cool bracts that are just like flowering machine. And that's it. You've got yourself some colour in your garden, and as long as you give them enough sun, they'll be happy. So that's it. If you want to subscribe to my channel, that would be great. If you want to see more videos, if you've got any questions or comments, just leave them in the comment box and I will try and answer them. Alright, have a lovely day. Bye.